Thanks for joining. It's Michelle Savage here. We're going to get started in just about 1 minute. Hi, it's Michelle Savage. I think we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar. I'm with XBRL US, nonprofit standards organization, and we're here for a session on a conversation with the SEC, filing fee disclosures and payment methods modernization. We're very pleased to have with us today two individuals from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Luba Dennis is Senior Accountant in the Office of Financial Management, and Mark Green, Senior Special Counsel, Division of Corporation Finance, Office of Chief Counsel. Luba and Mark are going to be sharing with us some perspectives on the new program, filing fee disclosures and payment methods modernization. And they're going to be led through this in a conversation with Scott Tice. Scott is CEO of NovaWorks, a longstanding member of XBRL US. Scott is also chair of the XBRL US Domain Steering Committee. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Thanks, Michelle. We're going to go ahead and start off here with just a little introduction as to what we're doing. And then we're going to intersperse this with 2 sessions of CPE questions. So be ready if you signed up for CPE. And why don't we go and get started here then? So this is about something that's coming down the road in the next year or two. The SEC will be putting out more and more information on it, but today we're really looking at kind of an overview and some of the larger questions surrounding the process of fee disclosure as it gets modernized. So first, it's going to require that all filing and fee information be put in inline XBRL, including the calculation. Amendments for the filing fees are going to be moved to an exhibit, a separate exhibit, and we'll be having some questions surrounding that. And the final rule requires a more detailed tabular disclosure of the filing fee determination and information presentation, capacity tracking structure, et cetera, for Edgar validation. I would encourage people to go ahead and look at the rule, the numbers there. You can just Google that number and I'm sure come up, or go to the SEC and maybe copy the screen of that link. And XBRL US also has some information up, and we'll be adding data as it's relevant to the process as we move closer and closer to having the information of the filing fee be mandated as iXBRL. So this is going to affect a suite of forms. There are some forms that are not part of this. It's going to be your 33 Act forms, your S1, 3, 4, 8, 11 foreign filing forms. And we're also going to have some of the schedules that are going to apply to this. And then finally, some investment management forms, N2 and N14. And of course, that also relates then to the amendment filings that are done under various rules. So we're going to have a phase-in that's coming through on this. The SEC will be doing this as a large accelerated 30 months after the effective date. That's a change, by the way, from the original proposal. Then accelerated filers, all other filers, investment management companies will start 42 months after the effective date. And again, that is also a change from the original proposed rule of 30 months. And here's a little cutout of that information. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the CPE questions right now. So if you participated in that, there's a checkbox, and there'll be poll stuff popping up here. So I'll turn it over to Michelle to run that right now.
Great. Thanks a lot, Scott. Yeah, I had forgotten to mention that we are offering CPE credits. So if you did request getting CPE, or even if you didn't, but you still would like to, go ahead and respond to the poll questions, and we'll be sure to get your certificate at the end. So I'm going to launch the first poll question, which is, which you should be seeing this on your screen right now, and just click on the button to indicate your response. The new rule requires the filing fee calculation to be prepared in which of the following formats: in inline XBRL, in XML, or in HTML. So just tell us which response seems most appropriate. Okay, I'm gonna give it about another 20 seconds. Okay, we're going to close down the poll in just a second here. And the correct answer to that was inline XBRL. So I'm going to end that poll. We'll move on to our next question. Okay, so large accelerated filers are required to comply on which timeline noted below for filings submitted on or after 42 months after the requirement's effective date, which would be July 31st, 2025. Filings submitted on or after 30 months after the required effectiveness date, July 31st, 2024. Or filings submitted on or after 18 months after the requirement's effectiveness date, which is July 31st, 2023. So just take a look at that and give us the answer that you think is most appropriate. And just about another 15 or so seconds for that. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and shut down that poll. And one thing that I've forgotten to mention at the beginning is that if you do have any kind of technical issues, please email us at support@xbrl.us and we'll do our best to resolve whatever issue you're encountering. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Scott.
Thanks, Michelle. So we'll start off here with the SEC disclosure. Does one of you want to read through this?
Thank you very much, Scott. We just are required to let folks know that the Securities and Exchange Commission disclaims responsibility for any private publication or statement by any SEC employee or commissioner. Each commission staff member's remarks today express that staff member's views and do not necessarily reflect those of the commission, the commissioners, or other members of the staff. And we just wanted to note at the outset that we're just happy to entertain questions that folks have after the webinar, and there's some contact information that is up on the screen for the three offices / divisions. It may not be entirely clear which one is best suited to respond to a particular question, but I can assure everyone that if a question comes into any of these offices and it's helpful to consult with the others, that's indeed what we'll do. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So why don't we go ahead and get underway here? So just to follow up, the questions are going to be confined to what we have here on the slides, and feel free to ask the questions formally later to those addresses. And I think if you chat them here, maybe Michelle will collect them up, and as XBRL US engages in certain discussions, we can also ask questions too. So why don't we start off with some general questions? Excuse me. How will the new rule affect efficiencies for the commission? How might that efficiency improve or affect issuers?
Thanks, Scott. This is Luba. I'll take that. Well, as some of you may know, the current process for filing fee disclosure can be very manual and labor intensive. The information that's provided is not necessarily machine readable. It's also in multiple places. So I'm sure filers know that they have to enter the information both in the header and the body of the filing. It can increase the risk of errors and inconsistencies. Also, the SEC staff spends a bit of time correcting some of the errors or reconciling inconsistencies in the filing fee calculation, and that can increase the burdens on the staff as well as the filer. And so with the fee-bearing filings that are now subject to the new content and tagging requirements, the plan is that the information will be provided in a machine-readable format, which would facilitate automated validation, including being able to test file and see if there are any errors that come up. Also, over time, it will eliminate the need for filing fee information in the Edgar header. And the hope is that information is entered once in a standardized, primarily tabular exhibit. Also, as many of you may know that have gone through the adopting release, there is a component that adds new filing fee payment methods. So filers will now have the ability, effective May 31st, 2022, will have the availability to add ACH, credit, or debit card options as payment options for their filing fees. This would provide added flexibility, also decreased possibility of payment errors, since they're, particularly with ACH, there's predefined fields such as a CIK field that ensures that a proper CIK is entered. Also, faster settlement times as compared to some of the infrequently used paper check and money order options. And as noted, check and money order options will actually go away effective May 31st as well. There was an announcement that the SEC had published on sec.gov yesterday. Some of you may have seen it, and it basically reflected some of these additional payment options and a reminder that checks and money orders will be removed. And all of this, again, is effective May 31st, 2022.
Thank you. So on to the next here. Is the Commission working to educate the legal community about the changes to ensure that issuers work with their compliance teams to adhere to the rules properly or appropriately?
You know, there are really two ways that the Commission educates on this. It does so directly and then also through the staff. The Commission itself publicized the adoption of the filing fee related amendments. You know, and it did so through a press release, a fact sheet, and a statement by Chair Gensler. The staff, on the other hand, it regularly speaks publicly about rulemaking developments, such as the filing fee amendments, and it responds to questions from the legal and other communities. And as I said, the staff is available and happy to respond to questions on an ongoing basis as they come up.
Thank you. Okay, we'll kind of have a preface to the next question. Sometimes a fee table changes, but no new fees are due, such as when a filer on Form S1 files a pre-effective amendment in compliance with Instruction 2A2 of the filing fee exhibit instructions to simultaneously increase or decrease the amount of registered classes, recalculate the total filing fee for the registration statement in its entirety, and claim an offset pursuant to Rule 457B. In the amount of filing fee previously paid in connection with the registration statement, and changes that do not increase the amount of the registration fee. So with that, and we all know there's a lot of amendments that can go on, particularly with an S1. In that case, should a filer include the filing fee exhibit?
I think on this question, the focus seems to be on Securities Act filings, and so I'd like to focus on them. That seems to be the focus of most of the questions. And those can be divided into two categories. The first is what I'll call initial Securities Act filings, and the second, pre-effective amendments. I think those are most of the filings that raise these questions. For those Securities Act filings that are subject to the filing fee amendments, a filing fee exhibit must be included within the submission for each initial filing. And for those of you who like to know exactly where the requirement comes from, most of the Securities Act forms that are subject to these amendments, the requirement is in item 601A2 of Reg SK. Form F10, which is also subject to the requirements, presents the requirement itself. And then for business development companies and registered closed-end funds that are not interval funds, these are filers that go on forms N2 and N14, the IM forms subject to these requirements. Those forms themselves set forth the requirements. When it comes to pre-effective amendments, the exhibit still must be included. It must be included in the exhibit index for the pre-effective amendment, but the filer is permitted to incorporate by reference a previously filed filing fee exhibit when the information has not changed. So as I would guess a lot of the folks are familiar, incorporation by reference is a legal construct where it's as if you had physically included it, but you're just doing so legally by referring to a prior physical filing of it. However, when there are changes to the required information in the filing fee exhibit, a filer must include a revised filing fee exhibit, physically include a revised filing fee exhibit within the submission and update the exhibit index accordingly. So turning back to the rather lengthy example that Scott began with, in this pre-effective amendment example, the filer would be required to physically file a revised filing fee exhibit that, as required by the related form instruction, would have to include in Table 1 revised offering amounts as securities to be registered for which filing fees have not already been paid, and the filing fee exhibit would have to separately disclose that the filer is using the recalculation procedure and would have to expressly reference the related form instruction. Change Act filings, which haven't been so much the focus of these questions, that are subject to the filing fee amendments, they have similar requirements. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So that leads us to the exhibit we've been talking about. So we'll get off with that then. So the new fee exhibit document on Edgar is called EX Filing Fees, but is labeled as EX or Exhibit 107 for most fee-bearing registration statements, i.e. the 33 Act. How should filers account for this exhibit in the exhibit index?
I'll take that one, Scott. So for registration statements that are subject to the 33 Act, Item 601 Reg SK and Form F10, those should list the filing fee exhibit as Exhibit 107. For Form N2, they should list it as Exhibit S, and then for Form N14, they should list the filing fee exhibit as Exhibit 18. Now, they should, of course, include a description or a label for the exhibit in the index. There's really no specific language that's required, just something that kind of describes what the exhibit is. And then when they actually upload the exhibit as an Edgar attachment, that's when they write kind of that EX filing fees that you have noted up above. Thank you.
Thanks. And then a follow-up to that then, must a Securities Act registration statement exhibit index contain a link to the filing fee exhibit filed with a registration statement or hyperlink to the fee exhibit if the filing fee exhibit is incorporated by reference to the registration statement? In other words, link back to the previous filing.
Right. So exhibit linking and hyperlinking are required when exhibits are not in XBRL, just for reference. So again, we go back to kind of some of the literature that's out there. So for filings subject to Item 60182, as many of you may know, each exhibit identify the exhibit index other than an exhibit filed in XBRL or an exhibit that is filed with Form ABS-EE must include an active link to an exhibit that is filed with a registration statement or report, or if the exhibit is incorporated by reference, an active hyperlink to the exhibit separately filed on Edgar. Also, Rule 105D of Reg ST requires the same regarding filings subject to Item 601, and in addition, filings on Forms F10, N2, and N14. Currently, we're not addressing whether links and hyperlinks are required for filing fee exhibits that contain inline XBRL. Thank you.
Okay, I would also assume that, as Edgar already requires that special attributes be put in for those links, that would apply to this as well. But we'll see when the Edgar filing manual is published to incorporate all this information. So let's move on to the next question then. And what are the consequences if a filer doesn't include a required filing fee exhibit or includes it but does not follow the required table format?
So taking that question in its parts, if the filer does not include a required filing fee exhibit, Edgar may suspend the filing, and if Edgar accepts the filing, it could result in a variety of other consequences, including, for example, a failure to make a correct and timely payment. And in this regard, as was true before the filing fee amendments were adopted, a failure to pay required fees could result in the securities not being deemed registered. Now, if the filer includes a required filing fee exhibit but does not follow the required table format, the consequences could depend on the extent and the nature of the failure and whether or not tagging of the information is involved. The consequences could include, for example, a delay in processing or an incorrect filing fee calculation. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so moving on to a different form here. The draft registration statement, or DRS, will never have an associated filing fee. Under the new rules, fee tables are included in the filing fee exhibit rather than on the cover page. In order to submit a filing in Edgar with an exhibit, the issuer needs to select from the preset of types to specify the exhibit that they are associating with the filing. Right now, however, EX filing fees is not available from the preset types for Form DRS. So the question is, how should issuers handle the situation?
We can confirm that it is not possible to submit a filing fee exhibit as an EX filing fees attachment when submitting a DRS through Edgar. The system does not support the inclusion of an EX filing fees with a DRS submission for two reasons. First, the DRS submission is not an official filing with the Commission, and second, no fee is due with a DRS submission as a draft registration statement. As a result, omitting the filing fee exhibit in a DRS submission is completely appropriate. I just want to remind folks, however, that when the registration statement is publicly filed, a filing fee exhibit must be included at that time. It needs to use the correct exhibit number for the relevant form, and it has to be an EX filing fees attachment on Edgar. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, and we're going to assume that as the Edgar system is updated to support this, a lot of this stuff will be incorporated and changed to follow the rules. So moving on then, we have the disclosure question here with, I'll just kind of put this whole thing up rather than have it be animated. On page 9 of the final rule release, it is noted that there are certain principal modifications to the proposal, including to streamline the presentation of filing fee related information and potentially facilitate any future changes in the structuring technology applied to it. The amendments move the filing fee related information to a separate exhibit, filing fee exhibit, rather than requiring it on the filing's cover page as proposed, and make related conforming changes. On page 94 of the table shown here further outlines this change. So the question then is, will the form instructions be updated to reflect the move from the fee table from the cover page to the exhibit?
As a legal matter, the forms and schedules subject to the filing fee amendments have all been revised as part of the rulemaking to reflect the move of the filing fee table from the cover page to the filing fee exhibit. In terms of the versions of the forms that are posted on our website, they've been making their way through the review process as revised. Almost all of them are now available on our website, sec.gov. There are, however, two forms that we still have not posted. One is Form F as in Frank 3, and the other is Form S as in Steve and F as in Frank -1. Thank you.
So I'll move on to some technical questions then. Can the Commission provide examples of how the fee tables, filing fee exhibit, should appear?
I'll take that one, Scott. So if you've kind of gone through the adopting release, you've noticed that the reg text provides the format of the fee tables and the related instructions, which provide guidance on when and how to complete them. In the future, filers will be provided an Edgar tool to construct and tag their own fee exhibits. And while the SEC has no current plans to provide examples of how the filing fee exhibit should appear, the staff is available to respond to questions, and depending on the nature and volume, the staff may decide to provide examples. Thank you.
Can the Commission provide examples of the XBRL tag documents that can be used as references?
The Edgar tool that I referenced in the previous question will actually enable filers to construct and tag their own fee exhibits, and they'll be able to examine the resulting output exhibits prior to submission. Also worthy of note that there is a phase-in period, so large accelerated filers I know are in that first batch, so there'll definitely be some references as well.
Is that tool going to be web-based? Do you know?
Can't really communicate that at this time.
Okay, good. If not available today, can these be made available prior to the XBRL requirement date? Not sure who was going to take that particular question. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think, sorry, the pause was because I believe that response was also for, the related to the Edgar tool is also for that question as well.
Yeah, which then relates to when will the draft taxonomy be available? And I assume a lot of this would roll in with all of that.
Yeah, you're right. We will provide a draft taxonomy prior to required compliance, but we can't provide a definitive date at this time.
Okay, great. Will the Edgar Beta be updated to allow testing of the filing fee tagging?
We will provide a beta testing period to filers enrolled in the beta testing program. Filers will have the ability to access a separate system dedicated to testing the filing fee exhibit submission requirements. We expect this test system to be available no later than 6 months prior to the compliance date for large accelerated filers. Thank you.
When the fee table is inline XBRL tagged, will Edgar submission header fee tags become obsolete or removed?
For those fee-bearing filings subject to the filing fee exhibit tagging requirements, the submission header fee tag requirements will be eliminated over time as filers become subject to the filing fee exhibit tagging requirements, and we program Edgar accordingly. Thank you.
Some fee-bearing filings are not subject to the filing fee exhibit structuring requirements. So will the Commission continue to require submission header fee tags for those particular filings?
So fee-bearing filings not subject to the filing fee exhibit requirements do, and we referenced some of them in the adopting release. These are ones that have relatively low volume. For example, the F6 and the Schedule B will continue to be subject to the submission header fee tag requirements.
And I assume the same would be true of 24F2NT.
Yeah, and that's out of the scope of that particular release.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. When the inline tagging is mandated, will a filing be suspended if the exhibit is not tagged? The SEC adopting release refers to a period where some errors in the filing fee data tagging would trigger a warning and a flag for staff to follow up and would later cause a suspension. So the first question is, would the suspension be due to any inline XBRL tagging validation issue or only for an XBRL error?
So kind of going back a step, because I know you had kind of a question in the previous portion of it. So just a broader view. So once tagging is required, while Edgar will automatically compute the filing fee due using the structured data and validate the information submitted by the filer, Validation failures caused by incorrect or incomplete structured filing fee related information will generally result in a warning to filers and a flag for staff follow-up, but Edgar will accept the filing. However, approximately 3 months after all filers are required to comply with the structured data requirement, the Commission will begin suspending filings rather than issue warnings for incorrect or incomplete structured filing fee related information. Commission staff will certainly provide advance notice of the specific date of the change to filers. In all, we believe that delaying suspensions until approximately 3 months after the last compliance date will give filers an opportunity to gain experience with the new tagging requirements. And that, coupled with the availability of the new tool, will increase accuracy and thus minimize suspensions. And then just to answer, as far as your specific question on whether the suspension due to any inline XBRL fee tagging validation issue or only with an XBRL error would be suspended, we'll provide more information closer to the compliance date on that particular question.
Well, I would assume if you have a structural transformation error or something like that, that's going to cause a general suspension, just as it would with any other XBRL filing. But I guess we'll see when we get there. During the transition period, when filing fee exhibit tagging is allowed but not required, what happens if a submission includes filing fee exhibit tags and header fee tags and they don't match?
And on that one too, we will provide more information on this closer to the compliance date.
And I assume that the table that is provided in the XML header, the Edgar header, has very specific line item entries on it. So that might be an area where things might not match, I would think.
Yeah, and again, there's just so many forms at play, and we'd like to kind of give more clarity as the compliance date nears.
Okay, did I go backwards there?
No, I think you're on the right one.
Yeah, I'm on the right one there. Okay, yeah, I'm rolling the mouse wheel, and that's a little, sometimes it skips. That's always been a Windows problem. So a filer initially files a registration statement on, for example, a Form S3 and pays a filing fee at that time. After the registration statement goes effective, the filer wants to file a related prospectus under Rule 424 that, consistent with the general instruction 2F of Form S3 and Rule 424G, includes a filing fee exhibit that contains, first, the maximum aggregate amount or maximum aggregate offering price of the securities to which the prospectus relates, and second, a statement that the prospectus is a final prospectus for the related offering. This disclosure would be provided in a narrative form consistent with the instructions. The filing fee exhibit would not include any fee tables. So the question then is, when a filer engages with the Edgar system in the course of a filing of prospectus, and the system asks whether the filing is a fee table included, how should the filer respond to the question under these circumstances?
In this case, the filer should respond no, as no fee tables are included. The filer still will be able to and should, however, attach the filing fee exhibit with the narrative disclosure. Thanks.
I would imagine that these are going to be are very common. Are there
Indeed,
any? Yeah,
think
go ahead,
that's
Mark.
true.
Yeah, I mean, we have lots of time here left, so if you want to elaborate, feel free to go ahead and do that.
Just wanted to elaborate that just in terms of questions we've received to date, this has been a common question, and so for that reason, we're very happy to be able to respond to it today with the larger group. Thanks.
Are there any concerns with PII being shared as credit and debit card payment methods are added effective May 31st, 2022? And just for people who don't know what PII is, that's basically your credit card information, and that applies basically across the financial. Anybody's receiving that information has to comply with that type of stuff. So at any rate, that's the question.
Thanks, Scott. So we will neither obtain nor retain any personally identifiable information, whether it be debit or credit card numbers, expiration dates, or card security codes from filers using the debit and credit card payment methods. Thanks.
And this is actually the last question, and I'll throw a follow-up in, being the moderator here. So will this have any impact on the fee management system that exists? Or will that just still be the same type of an interface?
So registrants will be able to access these payment mechanisms through Edgar, and ultimately the processing behind Edgar would be pay.gov. So that would be the mechanism that they would be able to submit the credit and debit card payment methods.
Okay, great. Well, that ends our questions here, and sounds like I think this is going to be not a really big deal when it goes into place. There's going to be a lot of mechanical aspects of this, but we'll have to wait and see until more information is released. So I'm going to go ahead now and hand it over to Michelle, who's going to present the second set of CPE questions.
Great, thanks very much, Scott. Let me bring up the poll questions. All right, so we're going to go to our third poll question. And hopefully you can see this up on the screen here. So the question is, new rule amendments make which of the following changes to the filing fee related information? Is it response number 1, it is moved into the filing? Response number 2, filers no longer need to prepare the filing fee related information? Or response number 3, it is moved to a separate exhibit? So make sure that you respond to the poll question appropriately. Okay, we'll give it a number, about 10 more seconds here. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and close down this poll. And I believe we received a question in from the audience. So I'm going to turn to Scott and see if you want to take that question, take a look at that.
Sure, we're not going to take questions live, but the question is, and I just answered that, we'd add it to the pool. What happens if you file a 14A as part of a proxy, but have no fees required? Are you still required to submit an exhibit showing no fees? And I'll leave it up to you guys whether or not you want to answer that.
I think we'll pass on that now. Thanks.
Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, and I can quickly, I'll go back at the end of the discussion here because I didn't add the slide to the end of the deck to show the contact places. So you can ask questions of the SEC directly, or we'll also collect them either from the Domain Steering Committee or from Michelle Savage, and have a correspondence with the SEC over the next 6 months or so, as we have a number of things, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any of those questions. We're going to be able to give you back a chunk of your day here because this went fairly quickly. Why don't I quickly bounce back to that?
Scott, I still have one more CPE question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Then why don't you do that?
Well, go ahead and bring that slide up though, because that's
sure.
a CPE question. People can
just get back to that.
Contact information.
Find it.
All right, so I'm going to bring up this last poll question.
There we go.
Okay, so here's the question. Which of the following efficiency improvements from the new rule are not related to XBRL requirements? Is it the first answer, more payment method options? Is it reduced manual processing or improved consistency and data integrity? Which of these efficiency improvements are not related to the XBRL requirement? Remember, there are a lot of improvements here related to payment and how the Commission is modernizing the payments process. Okay, we'll take another 20 seconds or so here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and shut down that poll. And one of the important efficiency improvements is more payment method options. That's not XBRL related, but it's certainly going to be an improvement, I think, from the standpoint of registrants. So I don't know if Mark and Luba, if you want to have any final comments for the audience here before we wrap up that portion.
Maybe I'll volunteer, and then if Luba wishes, I invite her too. Thank you so much for inviting us to share this information with this broader audience. We appreciate it, and please do not hesitate to contact us if you have questions over the course of time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark, and I'd like to echo my thanks for joining this webinar. Hopefully you find it helpful, and yes, please don't hesitate to reach out to us with questions. We really enjoy getting them and would really like to ensure that folks get the information that they need. So thank you.
Well, thanks very much for doing this and participating. As part of what we've been doing with the Domain Steering Committee is looking for methods for outreach on SEC topics, particularly have to do with XBRL, which is part of our mission and mandate. And we really appreciate it when SEC staffers will come on and speak on various subjects. And I think we've been having that about once every few months at this point. And I think it's good for everybody, and it really helps out the entire process. I'm going to go ahead and move to the end here very quickly. Oops, got a little too far. And bring up Michelle's current information. There we go. And again, thank you. So what's coming up,
Great.
Michelle?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, we have another event coming up next month. This is on understanding the new FERC taxonomy, time to focus. So that is going to be held on April 13th at 2 o'clock Eastern. So we hope that you can all join us for that event. And I want to thank everybody again for coming out and attending this session today. And I want to thank Scott Tice and the Domain Steering Committee for hosting the program. And again, thanks very much to Luba Dinitz and Mark Green from the Securities Exchange Commission. We do hope to be able to bring them back again, certainly as we get closer to the fee filing implementation date. We know that there's a lot more that we need to learn and things that are being worked on and developed as we speak, including some of those reference materials that were talked about during the call today. So thanks again. Please join us next month, and you'll be getting your CPE certificates for those of you who are getting CPE credit sometime very soon. Thanks again.